Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Curated Knowledge. And again, I'm joined by my co host, uh,
Yes.
my wife, Annie.
Hello, everybody.
So today we're going to go a little shorter than we did last time. I think an hour of edited audio is a bit much to sit through, even though we had some really interesting conversations. What do you
Mhm.
think?
I think that's a really good idea. Yeah, it didn't feel like an hour while we were talking, but I'm sure that listening to it, it definitely felt like an hour.
So the first story I have today is from science.org, and it's about VX548, which, what a weird name that is. But it's the
hmm
first non opioid, non CNS pain drug.
Ooh, interesting. That I've never heard of that before. Tell me more about it.
So it only works on peripheral nerves, those outside the brain and the spinal cord, making it unlike opioids. It's
hmm
already had successful phase 3 trials involving over 1,000 people both times, and Vertex, the company making it, plans to apply for Food and Drug Administration approval this year.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, in a mind and body course that I took many years ago, they talked about how pain exists really only in our heads, right? Only in our minds. Our bodies feel things, but it's received by the brain that pain is actually something that we can understand and experience. So we have all these nerves, and if a person doesn't have communication between that nerve and their brain, then they could break a bone or cut themselves or endure some injury, and it's not going to be painful because it's really picked up in the brain. So the idea of these painkillers that really just work on peripheral nerves and don't enter the brain in the same way that opioids do, that's really interesting to me.
And I think the key thing that has a lot of people really excited is the non opioid part, because
Mm-hmm.
that lends itself to not having the same addiction issue that opioids have today.
Yeah. Opioids have a huge addiction issue because they don't just take away physical pain, they take away all the pain. And I remember being in the hospital at one point in time and being on morphine and going, "Wow, okay, I can see why people would kind of like this stuff." So when people get hooked on opioids, it's really really hard to come off of them, and our bodies and brains create our own opioids to protect us in general. And when we have false or not false, but manufactured opioids in our bodies, we don't produce natural opioids the same way. So once a person's been taking opioids for a while, their pain tolerance actually can go down. So I would be really interested to see how this new drug affects people's pain tolerance.
One of the studies that they actually did, or one of the trials that they actually did, was comparing Vicodin to VX548, and it didn't show any statistically significant difference in the outcomes. The drug was significantly less effective than Vicodin in one of their bunion surgery trials that they did,
Okay.
but overall, the fact that this is not working on the opiate pathways, I think this could be a win if it gets approved by the Food and Drug Administration this year.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. Yeah, that's one to kind of keep my eye on. That's a really hard name to remember, though. So I guess it's just looking for the VX, whatever, whatever numbers and letters, right?
I'm sure marketing companies for this company, for Vertex, will come up with some really cool name for it when it actually comes out on the market.
Mm-hmm. Or they'll come up with a really dumb name. One or the other.
Either way, it'll hopefully be more memorable than VX548.
Yes, that would be very nice.
All right. The second story I have today is from The Star, and it's about a company called Remilk. It's an Israeli food tech company that has received a letter of no objection from Health Canada for their lab grown milk protein.
Ooh, okay. A letter of no objection. That's not saying we endorse this, but it's also not saying we're not going to do this. Lab grown milk protein. If it tastes like milk and it makes cheese, I think I'm okay with that as long as the cheese tastes good.
So that is the goal of this. It's not actually for replacing your glass of milk or your milk in your tea. It's actually to replace milk used in cheese, yogurt, ice cream, like milk products.
Mmm. If it tastes the same and it has less of an impact on the environment, I'm down. I love cheese. You know I love cheese. So for me to say that, like, I know that it has an environmental impact when I eat tons and tons of cheese. So if we can make that a little less, that would be good, as long as it tastes the same.
Have you tried any of the alternative milk cheeses that exist, like the oat milk cheeses or the cashew milk cheeses?
No. I do love my different animal milk cheeses, like buffalo milk or goat's milk or sheep's milk cheeses. Those are all really good. But I haven't tried any of the cheeses that come from nuts. Although I do really like having oat milk lattes now. So there's hope.
And I think one of the cool things about this is that they've created a protein produced in a yeast strain that does not, like they've tested it, it does not pose a greater risk to human health than whey protein from cow's milk that is currently available on the Canadian market. They
Hmm.
do say, though, that it will still require labeling for allergens. Even though
Okay.
it doesn't contain lactose, there are people that will still experience issues with this. I don't want to call it fake milk, Remilk product called BLG protein.
Okay. So has it ever been near a cow?
No, it hasn't.
It's never been near a cow. It's yeast.
And it's using a process called precision fermentation.
Precision fermentation. Okay. And okay. If it tastes like milk, then I guess we're good.
Some of the other advantages that it has is that it contains no cholesterol or growth hormones. And
Okay.
because it
Hey.
hasn't been near any actual animals, it doesn't have any of the issues that we have in our mass milk system that we have today with, I don't want to list off the things that is often
Mm-hmm.
in dairy milk, but this could be a clean alternative that has a lower environmental impact than
Yeah,
animal dairy.
and you mentioned that it doesn't have cholesterol in it, which is a huge problem with especially cheeses because there's such a high fat content in them and cholesterol as well. And so people who are worried about their heart or their brains or cholesterol informed in terms of like strokes or heart attacks and things like that, they could still eat cheese. And that sounds like a good thing to me.
I agree.
Hmm.
All right, our third and final story today is about a mine in Finland that is no longer being used, and they're looking at converting it into a gravity battery to store renewable energy.
I love Finland.
The Scandinavian countries just seem to have a lot more stuff right, don't they?
They do. They do. Every time I hear something about what they've got going on over there, I'm like, why can't we do that in the rest of the world? So tell me more about this gravity battery.
So the intention is that during peak energy generation from renewable sources, weights would be slowly winched up the mine's 530-meter auxiliary shaft and just
Okay.
kind of sit there at the top of the shaft with the brakes on. And then when you need that power later on, you turn off the brakes, the weight slowly goes down, and the winches and gears turn generators, creating either like a short burst of electricity at a high amount of power or a slow trickle depending on what's needed.
That sounds so bizarrely non-futuristic.
Well, here's the cool thing about this, okay? So it's about 80 to 90% efficient. So it's not necessarily as efficient as some battery technology, but the cool part about this is you can store this energy for as long as you need. It's not going to go away tomorrow, so to speak. It's going to basically be there on demand when you need it. And you're right, it does sound fairly low tech, but the big advantage as well is one, this mine wasn't being used anymore. So we have
Yeah.
this shaft, this ability to use this without needing to drill anything into the earth. And
Hmm.
secondarily, this is being done in a town in Finland that was very focused on mining. And now that the mine's closed, everyone's been wondering what the heck are they supposed to do? And now this creates a whole bunch, well, not a whole bunch, a few potentially a
Hmm.
whole bunch of low carbon jobs for a mining community.
That's really cool. I like that. And when I said it, it sounds so non-futuristic, that wasn't necessarily a bad thing, right? Like I think that in a lot of ways we kind of really do need to get back to our roots. And if you can take this mine and repurpose it in a way that isn't impactful on the environment and that helps them to have enough power for their people and creates some, maybe not a lot, but some jobs. All of that sounds like wins in my book.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that really is interesting to me is you don't need lithium, you don't need rare earth metals, you don't need an
Mm-hmm.
advanced processing factory to create a giant grid scale battery storage system. You basically need a heavy block of material that can be winched up a mine using electricity and then lowered back down again to create electricity. It's pretty simplistic, pretty foolproof in a lot of ways, pretty good efficiency. I'm super excited to see them actually do this. I know other places in the world have done gravity battery systems before on different scales,
Mm-hmm.
and this one seems like it's going to be a really cool one once it's done because a lot of them typically use bags of rocks or sand, or we've seen a lot of like pumped storage hydropower, which is not my favorite in the world, even
Mm-hmm.
though it has like a really low cost as a alternative renewable energy grid management system or power management system. I really think gravity batteries is really interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
again, this is not the only mine in the world that is being decommissioned. So, how many more of these could we turn into gravity battery systems? And what would that mean for the communities around them?
Yeah. Being able to repurpose, like we talked on the last episode about reducing, reusing, and recycling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that recycling is supposed to be the last thing that we do. First we reduce, then we reuse, then we recycle. This is reducing the amount of those precious materials that need to be taken out of the planet for batteries, reusing a mine that isn't being used anymore, and so it doesn't even need to touch on the recycling part. As a planet, we do need to really kind of find those ways of being inventive, right? And looking at what worked in the past and how can we make it work in the present in a way that is more sustainable and that leaves there to be something for the next generation to have and to be excited about.
I completely agree. If you're
Mm-hmm.
interested in more alternatives to giant grid scale batteries, I actually released a new episode recently called The Best Ways to Store Energy, and it talks about the different options that are available, like pumped hydro storage, like gravity batteries, and a few other ones. So if you're interested in this topic, please check that video out. So that's it for our main stories. Is there anything else you'd like to share today?
We watched yesterday a thing on solar panels and that it was like they are doing them vertically now instead of horizontally, or not horizontally, but like at the angle. Not all solar panels, just some can be actually set up vertically where they get the morning sunshine and the evening sunshine, and then in the middle of the day when they're the hottest, they're actually not at their peak energy producing time, and it actually helps them to be more efficient. And even that is looking at just a different way of doing the things that we need to do as efficiencies get more efficient. What other ways can we change things and think a little bit outside the box to be able to get the most out of the technologies that we're using?
And for those that are interested, that is Have We Been Doing Solar Wrong All Along by Undecided with Matt Farrell. He did a great video talking about how they got more energy than they expected from solar panels that weren't aimed at the sun. And yeah, we definitely thought that was a cool video.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it like that kind of, if we've got batteries happening like they're doing in Finland, and we've got these solar panels that can be more efficient. In his video, he actually talks about them putting some of them along the side of the. Well, he didn't say the 401. He just said in Toronto, but I'm going to assume that meant the 401 in Toronto, and I would like to see that happening over there. And then if they can find other ways of storing that energy, that would be cool too.
I completely agree.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening. If you have any comments, questions, interests, please let me know. The links to all the topics that we covered today will be in the show notes. And thank you so much for coming with me on this adventure, Annie.
Thank you so much for having me again.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye.